The Trump administration has followed through, in fact, on its threat to pull funding from Harvard University. Now, this comes just hours after the oldest and the richest U.S. college refused to, in fact, agree to a list of government demands. The Trump task force wrote Harvard's statement reinforces the troubling entitlement mindset that is endemic in our nation's most prestigious universities and colleges, that federal investment does not come with the responsibility to uphold civil rights laws. The Trump administration last month said it was scrutinizing as much as $9 billion in federal grants and contracts to Harvard as part of its efforts to combat anti-Semitism on U.S. campuses. My colleague Vishal Vivek, in fact, gets you the latest on this developing story.
They want these protests to be banned in campuses across the US, and they don't want students who are engaging in these protests to wear masks. That is one of the main things that they're asking the administration at these universities to do. And the other thing is that they want these DEI hirings, hirings that they do, diversity, equity and inclusion hirings that has been in vogue in the US for a while now. They want these hirings to be stopped. These two are the main demands, and they also want students to be identified if they have been involved in the past in various protests. So what the administration has been arguing is that these are steps they are taking to combat anti-Semitism across US campuses that has supposedly arisen in the wake of the Israel-Hamas war. That has been the crux of the whole story, and Harvard has not complied with these demands, saying that they are not willing to go off its independence and its constitutional rights. So Harvard is standing its ground. It's probably one of the strongest statements ever from a proper university in the US. It remains to be seen how other universities are going to respond to it, because almost all the universities face the same threat of their fundings being frozen by the US administration. So it will be interesting to see how this progresses forward, because there's another case going on. Immediately after the US administration contacted Harvard University to comply with these demands, Harvard had filed a counter plea in the court saying that they are not willing to comply with these demands, saying that they won't be letting go of their independence. So it's a lot of legal wrangling, so that will be interesting to see in the near future.
Singapore President Tharman Shanmugaratnam on Tuesday dissolved the city-state's parliament as it reportedly declared a general election on the 3rd of May. A release by the Prime Minister's office, in fact, stated that the nomination day will be on the 23rd of April this month. A polling date will meanwhile be announced by the returning officer later. Prospective candidates will file their election papers on nomination day, after which there will be 9 days of campaigning and 1 cooling off day before polling day. Donald Trump's deputy J.D. Vance has said in an interview there is a good chance that the U.S. and Britain will strike a great agreement on trade due to Trump's love of the country and its royal family. Now, Britain was spared the most punitive treatment in Trump's initial tariff announcement due to the two sides enjoying a largely balanced trade relationship. One of the first executive orders of the Donald Trump administration as he signed when he assumed office as US President on the 20th of January was to declare a national emergency among the southern border of the US. That order has a rider attached to it that President Trump might invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 and also possibly deploy the US military on its soil on the 20th of April. That's 90 days after the executive order was signed. The rider or the clause in President Trump's executive order on the 20th of January stated that within 90 days of the date of this proclamation, the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall in fact submit a joint report to the President about the conditions at the southern border of the United States and any recommendations regarding additional actions that may be necessary to obtain complete operational control of the southern border, including whether or not to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg took the witness stand Monday to defend his company against accusations by the Federal Trade Commission that it bought competing social media companies to dominate market with a monopoly. It was the first of what is expected to be 2 days of testimony for Zuckerberg, who will seek to explain two of his company's most important acquisitions, Instagram and WhatsApp. Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky has urged Donald Trump to visit the country to see the devastation firsthand caused by Russia's invasion. While the US president appeared to play down Moscow's latest deadly attack, the West on civilians this year, in fact, calling it a mistake. Meanwhile, international leaders condemned Russia's strike in the center of the Ukrainian city of Sumy on Sunday, which killed 34 people at least. Now, this also included 2 children. 2 ballistic missiles hit as people made their way to church for Palm Sunday. Asked about Russia's attack on civilians, Trump said he was trying to get the war stopped. And Donald Trump has claimed that Iran has been intentionally delaying a nuclear deal with the US. He cautioned Tehran against a drive for a nuclear weapon, saying it may very well have to face a military strike if it did not desist from its current activities. Now, Iran and the US officials met in Oman and also held positive and constructive talks last week. A second round of talks, meanwhile, is scheduled for Saturday this week. Trump said that Tehran must forego the concept of having a nuclear weapon. Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon, he exclaimed. On the other side, Iran claims its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes. However, experts say it is producing enriched uranium in amounts enough to produce 1 bomb every month.
Them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. You know, that's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have. We can't have anybody having nuclear weapons. You know, we can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. Only thing is one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon, and they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
The Oval Office meeting between Donald Trump and El Salvador President Nayib Bukele involved a lot of criminals and also the Maryland father who was mistakenly sold to El Salvador along with the Trent Aragua prisoners owing to an administrative error. The Supreme Court has ordered that Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia has to be returned to the US, but Monday's meeting between Trump and Bukele made it clear that no one, and absolutely no one, is concerned about that. In fact, Trump wants to send US prisoners to El Salvador if the law permits.
Shame, you're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the mediator, why don't they put out numbers? If it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. Jails. The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down.
A man who allegedly scaled the armed security fence in the middle of the night, eluded police and set fire to the Pennsylvania governor's mansion was denied bail Monday as he faces charges including attempted homicide, terrorism and arson. Cody Barmer had a brief court appearance Monday. He spoke with a public defender at times as he appeared in court late Monday afternoon after being released from a hospital, where he had been taken after an unrelated medical event. Now, 38-year-old Barmer of Harrisburg told police he planned to beat Governor Josh Shapiro with a small sledgehammer if he encountered him after breaking into the building. This is according to court documents. A motive, meanwhile, for the attack, including whether it had anything to do with Shapiro's politics or religious beliefs, wasn't immediately clear. China's President Xi Jinping on Monday called for stronger ties with Vietnam on trade and supply chains amid disruptions caused by Trump's tariffs. Now, this as he attended in Hanoi, the signing of dozens of cooperation agreements between the two communist-run nations. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has said that China and Vietnam were meeting to figure out how to harm the US. Now, the visit planned for weeks and part of a wider trip in Southeast Asia comes as Beijing faces 145% mounting US duties, while Vietnam is negotiating a reduction of threatened US tariffs of 46% that would otherwise apply in July after a global moratorium expires. Broadcast journalist Gayle King and the singer Katy Perry made a brief trip into space on a flight operated by Jeff Bezos' private company Blue Origins. It was the first time an all-female crew, in fact, had been to space since 1963. Their flight on Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket lasted 10 minutes and 21 seconds and took off from Blue Origin's launch site 1 in West Texas. Flights on the New Shepard rocket, which provide for a few minutes of weightlessness, did not have a pilot. Meanwhile, some critics have chafed at the suggestion that the all-female crew represented a moment of feminist progress. The New Shepard program, meanwhile, the centerpiece, in fact, of Blue Origin's space tourism business, is an avenue for the wealthy, powerful, and well-connected to go to space. Here's more.
Well, I don't know if any other pop stars have been to space, but I thought I wasn't sure if I was going to sing or if I wasn't, because I just wanted to honor my fellow astronauts and just, hold the space in space. But I did come around to just singing a little bit of What a Wonderful World. And I didn't pick one of my songs because, again, it's not about me. It's about the collective, and it's about the view that we get to see, that we're humbled by, and how wonderful our world is. And so I just thought that was very apropos. And I was singing that song years ago and had no idea I'd take a little snippet of it.
What did you all...
Hungary's parliament has passed an amendment to the constitution that in fact allows the government to ban public events by the LGBTQ+ communities, a decision that legal scholars and critics are calling another step towards authoritarianism. Now, the amendment declares that children's rights to moral, physical, and spiritual development supersede any other right than the right to life. Now, this includes the right to peacefully assemble. A judge in Bangladesh has issued an arrest warrant for former British MP Tulip Siddiq, niece of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, in connection with a corruption case involving state-owned land. Now, this is according to a report. The former city minister Tulip Siddiq has said an arrest warrant issued against her in Bangladesh over allegations she illegally received a plot of land from her aunt. The country's ousted former prime minister is a quote-unquote politically motivated smear campaign. The Hampstead and Highgate MP said, "No one from the Bangladeshi authorities has contacted me. The entire time they've done trial by media." Several hundred student protesters blocked the building entrance to Serbia's state broadcaster in Belgrade early Tuesday as they blamed public TV stations for coverage that favors President Alexander Vucic's government. A similar blockade was also organized in the country's second largest city of Novi Sad. University students in Serbia are behind almost daily rallies that in fact started after a concrete canopy crashed down in last November that is, at a railway station in Novi Sad, killing 16 people. The protests have rocked up populist rule of Vučić and his firm grip on power ever since. Here's more.
Došla sam da podržim studente u njihovim zahtjevima za hitno raspisivanje konkursa za REM, jer ovo stvarno nije u redu. Neobjektivnost RTS-a, znači neverovatnu situaciju prave da moramo da se borimo za osnovna prava.
Sudan's civil war broke out 2 years ago to the day. Since then, it has killed tens of thousands, uprooted more than 13 million, and created what the International Rescue Committee has termed or described as the biggest humanitarian crisis ever recorded. Meanwhile, wildfires were raging across Mexico, fueled by low rainfall and high temperatures, with February being the hottest month on record since 1953. According to Laura Velazquez, Mexico's National Coordinator of Civilian Protection, there were 114 active fires on Monday itself in 23 of Mexico's 32 states. Some 470,000 acres have burnt in the first quarter of the year already, compared to 168,000 acres during the same period last year.